And there he goes.
Gumby the movie. Ah yes, it's not every day that we have a chance to talk about a true stop-motion icon, one whose fame in the medium can be put right up there with King Kong, Wallace and Gromit, and Jack Skellington. Yes, Will Vinton is known to be the father of claymation, but Gumby is known as the definitive cartoon character made of clay that can turn into anything for the convenience of his adventures alongside his friends, including Pokey, who is his friend with benefits. Get it? That pun is going to cause some horrific imagery. Anyways, as Gumby had a prominent career on television in the 1950s and 1960s, along with a quick comeback in the late 1980s, it was only a matter of time that Gumby would make his big screen debut in 1995, which apparently was anything but a highlight in the Green Clay's history in terms of its performance. Now, before I get into this, I just want to clarify that I'm coming in this as a newcomer. I've definitely heard of Gumby before, and I did do some research on the franchise's history, but I've never actually seen episodes of the show before. So this will be my first true experience of watching a Gumby cartoon. But now that I'll be playing with animation's most famous clay, will this movie have the same enjoyability as the creativity of clay? Or will this have the same enjoyability as the taste of clay? Let's find out. The story. Considering that this is coming from the same creators of Gumby himself, including Art Clokey, I understand that there is an importance to stay true to the tone of the original, to make the movie feel like it is as authentic as possible to the Gumby that everyone knows and loves. And to its credit, there are some concepts that are charming and even imaginative. We all heard of the living toys cliche, right? In this film, that trope was given a unique twist in order to enhance its world building, where the whole movie is set in a toy store with books and video cassettes used as portals to different worlds. So, at least with its environment, it does deliver some promise that it would give out something original with plenty of possibilities for fun and creative moments. However, when actually diving into this, those promises get entirely thrown away by the feature's biggest issue. This movie is slow. And when I say slow, I mean that the whole thing is unbearably and monotonously slow. The pacing is slow, the tone is slow, the scenes are slow, regardless of the mood of the moment. Even the dialogue can feel like they take too much time because of the constant unnecessary pauses between each line.
Gosh, it must be awful losing your farm.
It just shows you that to borrow money is dangerous.
Thank you, young man.
I would comment that this speed breaks the momentum, but the film doesn't have any momentum to begin with. It always moves at this snail's pace from beginning to end. It makes the entire feature so difficult to get invested when it takes too much time to get to the point of what is happening in the scene, making this 90-minute feature feel like it takes the whole day to watch. In fact, it actually takes about 15 minutes for the plot to actually get started once Pokey finally catches up with Gumby. And that's another problem with the movie that makes it feel like it could be intolerably slow. There's barely even a story in the first place. As Gumby and his gang set up their band to raise money for the farmers, the blockheads kidnap them one by one to turn them into robots in a desperate attempt to make the dog Loudbelly cry pearls, and it's up to Gumby himself to stop them. Maybe there is a way to make this plot interesting and engaging, especially to take advantage of the setting and Gumby's abilities, but none of that really happened until around the third act, and even at that, with the movie's torturous pace, it actually delivers very little to explain why its audience should care about anyone or anything that's happening. It takes so much of its time that it ironically has no time to include the important elements that would make the movie worth watching. There are ways to make the film enjoyable with the plot it has established and the world building it created, but the story can't do much at all if it moves so slowly. The animation. Despite being a well-recognized franchise, the movie took the bold decision of not making any significant upgrades to its animation. It didn't really have the same kind of major budget that other stop-motion projects had at the time, so it ultimately decided to, again, stay true to the look of the source material. Some may complain that this makes the movie look cheap, especially for a 1995 film, almost to the point that it kind of feels more like a homemade movie more than a big screen feature based on a popular franchise. However, in the case of Gumby, it doesn't look bad. I'd even say that the best thing about this is that the animation can be charming. Yes, it's noticeable that it was done by a small crew with a very tight budget, but there's something about its simplicity that actually fits well with Gumby. When looking at the characters, they're just monocolored blobs or planks of living clay, emphasizing that they're not about what they look like, but rather what they do. You see, what makes Gumby an animation icon is how he is aware that he is just living clay, capable of morphing into any shape that he wants, and to the film's credit, there are times when he does show off his signature transformation skills, along with the others presenting their own abilities. It's one of those rare movies that takes advantage of minimalism that just has fun with the materials that it had, turning a bunch of toys into this immersive environment and taking some clay blobs and turn them into living characters. But as enjoyable as the look of the film can be, this is where the movie's pacing comes back to limit the enjoyability. Because everything is slow, it gives little room for the movie to immerse in its own little world or for the characters to show off their abilities. Yes, I did mention that Gumby presenting what he does best is a highlight of the feature, but those times are sadly far and few between. And there are moments when it wants to really elevate the mood, like when Gumby goes to different genres to fight against his own robot copy, but the execution makes it far less engaging than what it tries to be. I mean, it cannot be action-packed when the pacing doesn't match the tone. Also, as much as I do admire the homemade look of the picture, it can have some drawbacks that cannot be ignored. While the characters mostly consist of clay people, there are times when it also features humans, and they have an uncomfortable look to them. I mean, it can be jarring jumping from the clay boys to something that tries to look like a realistic person. Also, while there are times when the character animation can be smooth and move well, there are moments when the movements can feel awkward and try to bite off more than they can chew.
Oh my, we've split the chromosomes. We've got to reverse it. Patch in the DNA synthesizer component immediately.
This is far from the best stop-motion animation, especially for a movie from the 1990s, but when it works, it does have a bit of its own charming magic. The characters. Like I said, I'm not familiar with Gumby, and this is my first full introduction to these characters. I can give them the benefit of the doubt that the movie is most likely dependent on having the audience be already familiar with them from the show. But regardless of the context, these characters are just stale. Not only does the film's slow nature deliver very little of a story, but it barely does any service to have the cast be anything more than a bunch of bland tropes. In fact, their roles can be split to either be just the good-hearted helper, or just a complete jerk with no form of development, or have any sort of arc where they could grow their personalities. Even Gumby himself is just the all-around good guy that just wants to help the farmers, and that's it. What's unfortunate is that there are only a handful of characters that have a bit more of a trait than just being Gumby's support, but even at that, they still have little to no appeal to offer. I'd even go as far and say that some of them don't leave a good first impression and come off as just unpleasant jerks. I get having the blockheads being mean because they're the mute villains after all, but then there's Prickle and Pokey who often sound like they're usually in a bad mood or they act selfish.
Okay, if you find Gumby, remind him of the rehearsal at the barn, will ya?
Maybe if I feel like it.
Well, that's not like Pokey.
Hey, maybe he ate some bad hay or wild oats.
I'll find Gumby for myself, not for them.
Outside of them, there are Tara and Ginger, the fangirls of Gumby's band that are the first to discover the Blockhead's evil plot, but beforehand, their love for Gumby can get quite creepy to the point that they resort to just stalking him and continuously follow the band wherever they go. There's Professor Capp that's just the professor, but he's nutty because he has that Ed Wynn voice, you see. And then there's Lucky Claybird, the talent agent that wants to make the band popular and later help the gang to save the day. But I gotta say, with the way he talks, it could get quite tedious, especially when the movie is slow as it is.
I told that robot I wanted to meet you, not eat you. My name's Lucky Claybird. I was at your concert today. I liked it very much. I'm a talent agent, and I like to help you make it big in show business and TV.
Speaking of the way they talk, I might get controversial when I say this, but the voice acting leaves a lot to be desired. I get that some of the original voices have returned for this, including Dallas McKennon coming back as Gumby and Art Clokey reprising as Pokey and more, but it's noticeable how some of them are not professional actors capable of conveying believable emotions. Sure, Dal did a decent job, especially with the variety of characters he did, but with the rest, I don't think their first profession was acting, and training should have been included with the film. Again, I'll accept it if the problem is just that I'm not all that familiar with these guys, but since the movie didn't help me to get familiar with them, all I'm left as a newcomer is a bland cast with little personality outside of the helper or the disgruntled jerk. Holy Toledo! I never thought such a boring movie would be so tough to sit through. Gumby the movie is possibly the slowest film I ever watched, resulting in a tiresome animated feature whose charm from a beloved character quickly gets lost due to its unamusing pace. It makes the movie longer than it seems, drags scenes so long to the point that they drag the dialogue, it takes away any form of engagement when it wants to try to do something exciting, and leaves little room to help build itself as a proper movie. And it goes by so slowly that it doesn't have time to flesh out any of its aspects. Like the story felt like it was kept to a minimum, the characters are left practically basic with little to nothing memorable about them, and the animation didn't have time to present its true potential. Maybe this could be worth seeing once if you are a Gumby fan, but if you're like me and haven't seen anything from the character, don't make the same mistake as I did and don't watch this movie just yet. Start off with a few episodes, and if you like them, then maybe come back and check this out. But even at that, I'm not sure I'd recommend this one all that much. Regardless of the character's legacy, it's still an unpleasantly slow movie, and that is why I'm giving this the Animat seal of garbage. Then again, maybe it's just that I'm not all that into Gumby. Oh well, I always consider myself a morph guy anyways.
Hey everybody, this is Animat, and yeah, this movie sucks. I mean, there's not really much else to say at this point other than that this movie is so ridiculously slow that it's just not entertaining. And in a way, because of the fact that it moves at such a ridiculously slow pace, it does kind of commit to what could be the worst crime that you can ever do as a movie, and just not be entertaining, just not be engaging. And it makes me feel more interested to check how much time there is left instead of actually paying attention to what's happening in the feature, because yeah, I've already registered in my brain what is going on. It's just taking forever to actually get to the point of it all. And honestly, even if I do spend a lot of my time actually checking how much time there would be left, that's probably the most torturous part of the entire feature film. Because it moves so slowly, it feels like it's much longer than it actually is. So there have been times when I would feel like, okay, we're probably at the conclusion of the film, I'm probably almost done with it all, and then I would just check how much time there would be left. I was shocked to find that I was only 30 minutes in. I was like, wait, what? There's still the grand majority of the movie left? I'm only in 30 minutes? It's honestly ridiculous. And there are very few feelings that are much worse when it comes to watching a movie than that. When you think you're just about done, but then you realize there's a lot more of it left, and you still gotta sit through what you have already experienced. And I'm just gonna say right now, I know that there are ways that you can actually make a good Gumby movie, that you can take the materials that Gumby has established, including the character himself, the abilities that he can do, and especially with the setting of like the world of toys that Gumby and his friends can go and interact with, there are ways where you can actually make that movie good. It's just in the case of Gumby the movie, this is certainly not it. And yeah, I know that this is pretty much as authentic as you can get with Gumby, especially with the original voice actors and with the original creators that are heavily involved with that film. But still though, I still stand by saying that there are better ways that you can actually create a better Gumby movie than this. So again, there are ways that a Gumby movie can actually be good. But Gumby the movie, however, that's certainly not it. But again, I'm just looking at it from a movie standpoint. I know nothing about Gumby in terms of the content that it has provided, or at least I had never actually seen any of the episodes before. And like I said before, this is like my first full introduction to Gumby. And so far, it did leave me off on a bad first impression on this one. So if you're still new to Gumby as much as I was, then yeah, I highly recommend don't start off with Gumby the movie, because it might put you off from Gumby for a while. So yeah, start off with the episodes and maybe come back to the movie. I don't know, but maybe it's just me, or maybe it just really is that the movie is bad. Who knows? Alright, so with all that said and done, now that I am finally finished with Gumby, it is now time that we shall go and move on to a Patreon request. And this time around, it will be from Ryan Walterson. So I just would like to say that if you would like to be like Ryan and you want to go and support my work and get some amazing rewards at the same time, including but not limited to seeing my videos before anyone else, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animat. But at the same time, if you would like to go and suggest me an animated film you would like me to review and I would put onto the animation hat, then all you have to do is write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. So, with that said though, what is it that Ryan went to go and suggest to me? What is it that he wanted me to review? Well, very coincidentally enough, we're not really going to be moving anywhere in terms of the time frame. In fact, what we are going to be looking upon is actually going to be another stop-motion animated feature from the mid-1990s. Except with this one, I'm sure that it's going to be much better than what we have experienced with Gumby the movie. So stand aside, Gumby. Let a true stop-motion filmmaker like Henry Selick show you how it's done.
Holy Toledo!